Good day, everyone. This is Rafael Collazo. Thank you so much for watching this Substack, or at least maybe thank you for if you heard. You may even hear about it. Who knows? I wanted to just share before the weekend was out that I've been going through a lot of. We've been like many of you. I've been monitoring what's happening at Delaney Hall in Newark, New Jersey. That shameful ICE detention facility. I mean, I've been following closely since it was reopened, but in particular the last week or so, where the innocent people that are detained and imprisoned and being tortured in that facility are hunger striking and organizing themselves to share their story. In the case, they've gotten a letter out of the facility to share their story of how they're being tortured and the pain, the physical and emotional toll this is taking on them as they're being malnourished. We're hearing reports of violence being perpetrated on them, being punished by ICE and CBP officers, and despite that, they're continue to organize, continue to elevate their voices, and they have created a groundswell of support outside of the facility in Newark, largely being led by their family members, their loved ones that live in the tri-state area. That whether that are just wanting their almost universally innocent people released, and for that facility to be closed and for all of them to be freed and be back with their loved ones. And I've been thinking a lot about them and thinking about how yesterday, in my tiny little way of solidarity, I fasted for the day, and then uh, I went to I went to I contracted the last couple of days a toothache, and I went to the dentist this morning, as I have the privilege of doing, and dealt with it. And so now it's better. And as I was in the dentist chair, all I could do was think about the folks at Delaney. I'm like, if this was impacting me inside that facility, I would not have any recourse to deal with it because um, they're not, basically not allowing people under very dire deathbed kind of circumstances to get any medical care. We're hearing reports of women having miscarriages there, impregnated there, about to give birth there. And so if they're not getting proper medical attention, nobody else is. And so just thinking about the privilege of dental care, especially as a Latino, especially a Latino that lives in the state of New Jersey, about an hour and a half away from that facility. And just thinking about, can only imagine just my one day of fasting in solidarity and this one minor inconvenience with this tooth, just overwhelmed by just thinking about what these folks are going through in that facility and what they're going through in facilities around the country that our tax dollars are paying for because of this shameful Republican Congress passage of the shameful OBA law, which bloated DHS ICE funding in multitudes, factors that are just totally out of bounds with the budgetary process. And uh, and doing also, huge tax cuts for the ultra wealthy and massive cuts to our basic services, particularly around healthcare. Now we have hundreds millions of people that have lost healthcare because they can't afford it anymore, or are spending an exorbitant amount of their personal financial budget to just cling on to the healthcare that they have. So, and we see multiple examples of where this administration is just literally pillaging our treasury. And I said from the very beginning, when I got into tiffs on social media with people that I know from the community about, well, Ralph, they're just trying to save money with Doge. And I said, this whole thing is just about stealing your money. You know that. And I don't backtrack on a single word I've said about this administration because that's exactly what it is. And so the cruelty, but the resilience of these folks and their loved ones and the larger community that's there to support them. I just can't say anything more about them and how much we care about them. And I plan on getting to Delaney soon. And I feel really bad I haven't gotten there yet, but I've been doing the work to provide support for communities like the one that's going through it right now in Brick City and around the North Jersey and the whole region. And so I just, as we enter this weekend, I just want people to really take a moment to think about the privilege that they have. And even, my case as a Latino with the privilege of having documentation, and not having an accent, um, and just not being as much in the crosshairs of this administration, even though I could be too at any time. It's happened. We've had all kind of folks that are citizens that have been detained, harassed, who knows? They could target me after making this video. But a privilege, nevertheless, that we cannot just waste. And we have to use our voices and our bodies and our talents and our prayers and our advocacy and our courage, and our compassion to our spiritual base, um, and our moral clarity to support these families at this time. So whether it's through philanthropy or being, standing in front of those gates and make sure another vehicle doesn't get out so that another loved one can be taken away to another facility, we need to be there for those folks at Delaney. Continue to support the people of Delaney Hall and the folks in Dilly and all these other shameful, the torture chambers around the country that are called ICE detention facilities. And if we're not focused on them, number one, I don't know what we're doing as a people. As I shared on my podcast yesterday, I think the Delaney situation has really brought to light what the bigger problem is that you have a facility that is primarily Black and Latino run in terms of ICE staff, security guards, maintenance staff, what have you. And if they didn't go to work every day, this administration would not be able to jail their loved ones for nothing and torture their loved ones, their neighbors, their friends, people that live in their communities. And so that lack of moral clarity on how you're supposed to live your life and how you can find, not all money's good money, is really the crux of this problem. And that goes beyond politics, that goes beyond this administration, that goes beyond the last couple of years. This has been a generational long, going for self is way out of control right now. And the fact that we are not doing everything we can to get those people out of the facility is really a moral stain on all of us. So we need to care for the most vulnerable at this time, care for each other, and start centering our society and our families and our communities in a collective responsibility to take care of one another. Thank you, Rick. I appreciate you watching. Rick Lombardo, a great mentor and friend. If you ever need an Airbnb in the western part of Puerto Rico, Rick is your guy. He's got a beautiful home in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Rick, Aguadilla comes up all the time now. I'm like Mr. Aguadilla. And that part of the island, I've just kind of fallen in love with it thanks to your, introducing me to your community there. And I actually posted a show yesterday. People could check out on Substack in the archives a fuller episode, but I just wanted to say a few words before the end of the week because, this is just what's happening in Delaney is just totally gross. And but the community journalists, the activists, the families, the little kids that are just waiting for their mom and dad to come out of there. I had a friend that I was talking to about this, and they mentioned to me that they had a loved one that 10 years ago was incarcerated in Delaney, an older woman for 2 months. So you just never know how close this is to your life, and it's you never think that innocent people that are just going about their lives, not criminals, not the worst of the worst, all that bullshit, all those bullshit narratives they like to put out there, just regular people that are running bodegas and working maintenance, babysitting, you know, more, just living their lives and not bother nobody, and most likely have U.S. citizen kids, may have a U.S. citizen partner, and are just been here a long time, big part of our communities, are being treated this way indiscriminately, and it's just something we can't talk about enough and put in the forefront enough. And this guy's going to do everything he can to distract us because he has nothing else to sell. He's offered none of his own base. He's done nothing but destroy their economic futures and our standing in the world, which is going to affect all of our kids and grandchildren for generations. And if you're not paying attention to that, I don't know what to tell you. They're all BRICS and the petrodollar and the Chinese hegemony in the region, and Europe saying, "Hey, we can't rely on the U.S. anymore to protect us. We got to take care of ourselves." And the alliances being built between Europe and Asia and all these different characters. Who's going to be left holding the bag in ring around the rosie's us, because we have this real negative going for self attitude with the rest of the world. Guess what? They don't appreciate that. So I know for most people, the ramifications of that are particularly they don't feel are important to them. But that, you know, as you can see from the gas prices, if you don't work well with others, it's going to come back to impact you, because when you need help, there's going to be no one there to pick you up. So, and all the other stuff is just an absolute disaster. From tariffs, how they treated our farmers, all the relief, just go on down my list, fam. I mean, the healthcare stuff. I mean, I've had multiple people close to me telling me, "Oh, well, instead of paying $350 a month, I'm paying $1,200 a month for healthcare, or I'm gonna have to cut my healthcare. I'm gonna have to, you know, get bargain basement healthcare. Just have it so if I have to go to the emergency room, because I can't afford just having it, I'll just pay for my out of pocket, my normal visits." Um, it's just just not offering anyone anything. So you just turn to nonsense. You just make up things to distract people, when in fact the main thing for this, the the main focus of this administration is to steal as much they can out of our kitty, and and control everyone that's not a non-elite white male Christian male. That's it. This is not a real complicated agenda. And so anyone that doesn't that thinks that's helpful for everybody, even upper scale white men, long term, doesn't know their history, doesn't know political science very well, because if you look at it, all the societies that were set up like that crashed and burned, and certainly weren't the superpowers that we are looked upon as the world, as we're basically giving that up um, because we're going for self. Keep praying, keep supporting, do everything you can to support those people in Delaney Hall and all these other detention facilities. Enjoy your week. It's going to be beautiful weather around the country, and we will continue to elevate these stories and elevate the humanity of people like the families in Delaney Hall. Have a nice weekend.